Can I go? Hmm?
No. We did not rehearse or talk about this. Do you know what this is? Yeah? Yes. Oh, good. From Toyota. They started using a house many years ago to explain its system. So a system is a very complex, difficult thing. And Nigel, where's Nigel? Hello, Nigel. And so we talked about it this morning, I think, a little bit, this idea of system. So this is a very simple way of showing a system, excuse me. And this is anyone could use this to create your own house, or your own system. And it's organized by questions. I think that's very, very, very important. Not by the solution, it's organized by the question. If it's organized by the solution, that means you will copy someone else's solution. If it's organized by the question, you can make your own solution. So the idea is, let's start by thinking, what is our purpose? What is our value-driven purpose? That's a question that any organization can ask itself. CINT can say, why are we here? Or Cesar? Or anyone, or Toyota, why are we here? That's where the original Mr. Toyota started, and Akio Toyota today. In fact, I ask themselves that. Every single person in a company can ask themselves that. Why am I here? On behalf of the organization, on behalf of the company, on behalf of creating value, why am I here? So then I can make that mine, I can relate to that. So what needs to be done, what processes can I improve to do the work, to accomplish my purpose? Then, as I think about what the work is, the process, we have to ask, what capabilities, what skills do I need? What skills do I have? What skills do I need to be able to do the work, the process, to solve the problem, to fulfill the purpose of the organization? It's a very simple, very logical thing that I think can dynamically apply even in today's room. That's, how we, that's the people who live inside this house, how they can manage their work. You manage your household every day. Those of you who go home, maybe this might be on. And then at the bottom, there's a foundation. And at least my working and Art's working, I think hypothesis is that the foundation, fundamental thinking, maybe isn't changing so much. In fact, if it changes too much, you have, if you've ever built a house, the most important part is the foundation. If that's not strong, it just falls down, it can go anywhere. And the nice thing about this metaphor from Toyota is it's got two pillars. Take one away, what happens? It just falls down. Take the foundation away, what happens? So, in an elegant way, it's just showing things as a system. So, there's a spot there in the roof that Christopher put it. And there's some red here, so it probably relates here. I think so. That makes sense to me. And then this, it certainly makes sense to me that it would be here too. If it's got to be here, it's got to be here. So in other words, digital skills, which I have no clue. And you've got it down here too, okay? I suppose. And Nigel, you can help teach me and all of us about that. I don't really know. But I think that's their own system in a simple way, Because we're simple people, and everyone knows this is very famous now. I think this version is from the EU or something. Any Europeans here? This book. So this is where using the word lean came from. Now the word lean is just one that's a group of people sitting in at MIT. I'll show it in a minute. Well, what should we call it? What should a group of academics outside Toyota call this? Well, we don't want to call it Toyota because then everyone says, that's just Toyota, it's not me. So they said, really, it's maybe 6 or 8 what lean production is. They call it lean production. And it says production. Nowhere in this book, by the way, or nowhere in that entire team did they ever use the term lean manufacturing. Somehow that became kind of a myth that came out. And what they meant by production was the entire enterprise that's organized to be able to produce. They didn't mean it just factory floor. Word than lean, by the way. And even going back to that room at MIT in 1988, that might have been a nice, if someone had come up with that, that might have been better. So you know who did come up with the word agile? Solved. Then to the work to be done to address it. Okay. Then we think of how technology can be used to support the work to be done to solve the problem. It's basic. For example, 50 years ago, to think about Toyota, robots were a disruptive new technology 50 years ago. Then and today, Toyota was and is a fairly cautious adopter, always mindful of purpose, process, and people. Little thinking, and it often goes from theory to practice. Here's grand theory, we're smart people, and okay, how do we make this work in the real world? That's the theory. So the Toyota way, Toyota production system, that was all developed through practice. So, and how do we go from practice then to action learning? Do things, try something and learn from it. Do something and learn, addressing questions along the way. So, design thinking. We have Agile Scrum. These are all wonderful things. And now this digital innovation, which again, I don't know exactly what it is, but the world came out, 30s, whatever, 30-something years ago. And they named it lean production. Right after that, in the United States, something called the Iacocca Institute, which was sponsored by the U.S. Big Three, Chrysler, GM, Ford, and the government and everybody, created something they called agile manufacturing. Manufacturing was a huge initiative to create books and books and books of theory, where everything was translated into different terms. And it's good stuff. It's good conceptual stuff. There it is. So more complex is more complicated. So lots of stuff there, vision, drivers, characteristics, and national infrastructure enablers. So this was all developed by the early 1990s. A software engineer at Chrysler, whose name was Kent Beck, said this is all interesting. He left Chrysler, wrote a book called Extreme Programming, which I believe was the kickoff, really. So he was a leader of foundation. Apply them to different circumstances. That was the birth of agile manufacturing, which was then forgotten, and then it was reborn. It was pulled up out of the ground and utilized then to make what we now call agile development, agile software development, all that kind of articulate differently. Womack and Jones said, go to the Gemba, one of the only two Japanese words you need to know. Gemba is a good one because it indicates it has a richness of where does work take place. And it's fine. And so this was the original TPS house. And okay, Art, I won't have time after this, so just one little bit more. I went through this exercise. It was a lot of fun. Of taking a TPS and doing a direct translation to Industry 4.0. And it turned out to be more interesting than I thought it would be. Time, low, eliminate waste. Through just-in-time and Jidoka, the two main pillars. And then the foundation, stability, and Kaizen with people in the middle. People bringing this house to life. Sometimes in English, we distinguish between a house and a home. A house is just a physical structure. It becomes a home when people live in it. And they adapt in different ways. If your family lived in my house, it would be a different home than it is with mine, right? So between humans and technology, can you believe this? It fits so well with what we're talking about. And as applied to digitization, Jidoka holds that all data should be valuable. What does valuable mean? In this regard, I think it means accurate. No false news, fake news. You have fake news in Brazil. Needed information should be made available when it is needed. Not before, not after. So pulled by Jidoka as a concept is really very rich and deep and kind of the earliest. To make sure we're building inner quality. There's nothing more disrespectful to people than having people do things, right? That's not needed. That's not valuable. That has to be redone. That's the most disrespectful thing we can do is have people do that. So we want to build quality in at every moment. And so that means we want to find quality issues right now, right as a person is doing it, as a person is engaged in doing the work. And that's exactly what you can see in the other slide that Christopher showed this morning. It's the very same thing. So these concepts go back a long way, but now they're applied in different ways with all this digital stuff. And so Lean Thinking Industry 4.0, and this also I really liked it. I think you showed this question. It really is a cool concept, and this is very popular in the whole software world, right? Fall in love with the problem, not the solution. And the reason I think people have t-shirts now is because we don't do that. At least Americans don't. Americans love to fall in love with the solution instead of the problem. And it's more completely about what problems are and how we can address them. And with that, I will turn this over to Art.
We fight too much over problem-solving methodologies and techniques. Okay? And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I don't have everything on here. But I wanted to try and put it in some logical order. I'll try and connect it to the very useful stuff that Nigel talked about this morning. Everybody involved. The respect for people part of this. Everybody's capable of thinking. Everybody's capable of problem solving. And I want people to do that at basic levels as well as advanced. And that's the theory behind the 4 types. Okay? As I said, you go home, you make type 0, you make type 5. That is up to you. I don't think these 4 will change this much over the next 50 years of my lifetime. Okay? The concept, at least in Toyota historically, has been this. You have a line, okay, and the line represents standard, okay? You have a current standard or current condition. If you're below the line, you're red or yellow, okay? If you're below the line, you got a problem. You're not on time, you're not meeting standard, you're not meeting quality, you're not meeting whatever. And this was a huge theme in Toyota in the 1950s, 60s, and even today. Disrupted. He arrived this morning, straight from the airport to here. His flight yesterday was missed. A year ago, I almost missed the Brazilian Lean conference because I had diverticulitis and had to go to the hospital. The morning I was scheduled to depart. Houses go on fire, Takata airbags explode. Marissa Meyer still can't tell us, Yahoo still can't tell us why 2 billion of us had our email accounts hacked, okay? Well, they did have a problem, but technically all they did was troubleshoot a bunch of accidents and mistakes that happened. The root cause wasn't addressed in the meeting, in the movie, and they talked about it. They solved it 3 months after the mission was done on TV. And this does have deep roots in Toyota. Type 1, you can argue, maybe that's where they started problem solving, saying that every employee has the right, the safety and mental and emotional security to say, I have a problem in my job, this cycle, this second, and we want you to raise the red flag, stop the line, whether that's in software or in the office or in the production line, say we have a problem, and we need to have a fast response. We will not solve the most complex problems by this method. It is not designed for it. By design, it is solving the problem this minute, the golden minute, the golden hour, and responding properly. Do this. And I adopted the term 4Cs, 4C thinking. Concern, cause, countermeasure, check results, which is primarily a thinking pattern. We don't document, we don't write much of this, although you can find it directly on defect reports and things in Toyota if you look for it. Problem is type 1's not good enough, as you all know. Some people say type 1 is just treating the symptom, and it can go beyond that. But the fact is, you have to have a type 2 response. And this is where the bickering, the fighting just needs to end. I don't care if you use Six Sigma, I don't care if you use 8D, or which version of Toyota's step-by-step process or something else. If you have a gap from standard problem that has a root cause, you can follow step-by-step methods and get to a better solution space, return to standard, and solve a lot of problems, okay? And this is not simple. You have to have this capability in your organization because type 1 will not work for even the basic. Forget the complex. Type 1 won't even solve a lot of the more complex ones. They can treat my diverticulitis. They can give me pain medication, antibiotics. They can't tell me the root cause. Okay? And this is why you see so much emphasis in different companies around the world, GE, Toyota, everywhere I go, on some type of reductionist, funnel-based, step-by-step problem, which is fine. You need it. You have to have some analogy, some logical way of doing this in your organization to get back to standard or improve on problems that do have the proverbial root cause. Okay? Complex cases that do not converge to simple things. You have systematic problems, which is interaction between many things, which could be simple complexity, or you can have the extreme complexity, which I think he was really warning us about this morning, and ways of dealing with that. And to analyze the methods of what we're doing now and say it could be better tomorrow. Olympic athletes have to do this, right? You and your business have to do this year after year where the competition gets in front of you. And this is where it starts to get very open-ended, a little bit scary, because you have to decide how things should be. Safety, quality, cost, delivery, productivity, morale. I'm not saying there's a problem, and I'm arguing there is not a single root cause, but you have to pursue some creative way a better solution space if you want to improve. Complex and say, well, there's material, there's information, there's people, there's complex processes. This is what John Shook, Mike Rother, and Jim Womack did in Learning to See book, Value Stream Thinking, to start chipping away at these more complex, open-ended things. But it's not everything, okay? Toyota does do what I call type 4, and every organization, especially this audience, needs to think about the future in type 4. The more analog, the more primary industry you are, the slower things tend to move, right? Mining and agriculture is going to move a little bit slower than electronics and software, for example. Brands, engagement, some of these are more emotional, some are more logical, some are more digital. And you got design thinking, lean startup, set-based design, the Russian theory of inventive problem-solving trees. You've got all the stuff that Nigel talked about this morning, and more. So, that is you. That is your homework and assignment. You have to go home, digest not only the things from all the speakers this morning, but what I'm talking about over the last 50 years of problem-solving development. And emphasize 4 at the expense of 1 is the only kind of counterweight I want to put on things. I'm a huge people person and involvement of all employees. And the most democratic, easy way to employ employees and show respect for people is still type 1, but it's absolutely far from the ideal where we need to go long term.
Quite happy to put the digital piece at the top, but I think you were right earlier. It does fit in process improvement. It does fit in capability, skills, teamwork, and it fits in our foundational pieces.
It looks like the manager lady is holding something red too. So
there you go. So I don't think it changes it.
So I'm just wondering. I don't know that it changes the purpose, because remember, this is really a question. It says to ask each organization and individual to ask, what is your purpose? Why are you here? And we use sometimes the term, my purpose is to provide great digital experience. Or we know a software company in Ann Arbor, Michigan that says that their purpose is to relieve the suffering of mankind that's caused by digital technology. Anyway, that's fine. That's totally legitimate to have that as your purpose.
But this is customer first. This is the customer first value proposition.
If a company decides they believe in customer first, absolutely.
And digital is just the way we achieve.
The way to do
the way we achieve that outcome for the customer.
Yes. And respecting a worker was one thing. They were making automatic looms, that wouldn't stop and all that kind of thing. So that was great. And what it means today in a software development office, where you have people sitting around using their brains, maybe getting burnt out, getting tired, then it means something very different. How it changes.
We talk about Jidoka all the time when we talk about software development. I work for a technology company.
No, you can do anything you wish. But if we think about data and information, right, and we want it to be useful, and you'd like it to be pulled. I mean, it's a just in time. It's a traditional, it's sort of a lean or TPS concept. But I think this is one way to develop it as a conversation comes up. We talk about acquiring people with certain skills. We talk about being agile, being able to move from here to there. But so one of the ongoing paradoxes or conflicts to work through is the way I think of developing people. I know the way Art does. It takes time, and I know Cesar CIT you wrestle with this a lot as well. So we have this rapidly changing world, VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. That was Christopher. He's good at this. Just turn people loose. They'll do the right thing, and there's a lot of truth to that. But it takes time to be really good at what you do, to be able to execute, and to become what is the skill that will serve you wherever you go, whatever you do. We think about schools. Got any teachers here? Got any kindergarten or elementary? We'd really like to think that that's what we're teaching, right? Is we're teaching problem-solving skills. So we pour in a lot of facts and data, memorize this, but you want people to become critical thinkers. But in the U.S., I spent some years memorize certain algorithms and things like that. They're teaching the wrong behavior, I believe, to memorize solutions, as opposed. But if we can develop our people to be good problem solvers, then no matter how the world unfolds, right, in the future, those skills will serve them well. So then, how do you do that? When we don't have a stable environment, or an environment that wasn't stable as maybe it was just a few seconds.
No, negative.
Well, okay, I wasn't trained in how to read the clock.
you want to finish this
Well,
slide?
just one thing. So again, I think so. These slides will be made available to you.
Yeah.
So this is one that I tried to show that lean is an evolving thing, and it has deep roots that goes back to the beginning of Toyota and before that. And then Toyota did some amazing things. Not because there were more brilliant people there in Toyota City than there were in Detroit or in Wolfsburg. I don't believe that for a minute. But a combination of a very complex environment led to an organization being able to come up with some solutions to how people can work together in an organization in a more effective way. And so that's what we're all trying to figure out, how we can learn from that and do it in our own way. So there was 30 years of incubation in Toyota City, and since then it's exploded in different ways, and especially now with Lean Startup as a Scrum Design Thinking and this whole Industry 4.0 and digitization. The future is an exciting thing, and I don't know where it's going to go. Nigel, I'll follow you as this new thing comes along. But this also you can read about in this. There's an article. We have an online journal at LGN called Planet Lean. Nigel's written for it as well.